Behind the laughs and landlord schemes of Santa Monica's most famous apartment lay secrets stranger than any sitcom plot. From near-plane crashes that changed casting history, to wardrobe malfunctions that shocked censors decades later, the beloved roommate comedy harbored bizarre production stories, jaw-dropping behind-the-scenes drama, and connections to Sesame Street that would make Big Bird blush. Buckle up for the wildest revelations about 15 weird facts about Three's Company 1977. You never knew. Fact 1. Billy Crystal almost played Jack Tripper. Before John Ritter became the lovably clumsy Jack Tripper, another future comedy legend was seriously considered for the role that would define 1970s television. Billy Crystal, who would later become famous for his work on Saturday Night Live and romantic comedies like actually auditioned to play the hapless cooking student who pretended to be gay to live with two attractive roommates. The casting process for Three's Company was incredibly competitive, with John Ritter ultimately beating out 50 other actors for the lead role, including Crystal himself. At the time of auditions in 1976, both men were relatively unknown performers trying to break into mainstream television, though each had already shown glimpses of their comedic talents in smaller roles. Crystal had appeared briefly in All in the Family and was building a reputation as a stand-up comedian, while Ritter had been making guest appearances on shows like The Waltons. The decision to go with Ritter over Crystal would prove to be one of those sliding door moments in television history that completely changed the trajectory of both actors' careers. Ritter's natural gift for physical comedy and his ability to make Jack Tripper both bumbling and endearing became the heart of Three's Company's success. His pratfalls, facial expressions, and perfectly timed stumbles turned what could have been a simple sitcom premise into comedy gold. Meanwhile, Crystal's career took a completely different path after losing out on the Three's Company role. He went on to join Saturday Night Live in 1984, where his impressions and characters like Fernando Lamas made him a household name. From there, he transitioned into movies, becoming one of the most successful comedy actors of the 1980s and 90s. It's fascinating to imagine how different Three's Company might have been with Crystal's more verbal, observational comedy style instead of Ritter's physical approach. The show's entire comedic rhythm and energy could have been completely different, possibly changing the course of television comedy history. Fact 2. Suzanne Somers nearly died before her audition. The day before Suzanne Somers auditioned for what would become her career-defining role as Chrissy Snow, she experienced a terrifying near-death experience that almost ended her acting career before it truly began. Somers was traveling on a commercial flight when the plane encountered serious mechanical problems that brought it dangerously close to crashing, only to be saved at the very last minute through what she later described as miraculous circumstances. This harrowing experience left Somers deeply shaken and questioning whether she wanted to continue pursuing acting at all. At the time, she was still a struggling performer who hadn't found much success in Hollywood, and the near crash made her reconsider her entire life path. The brush with death put everything into perspective for her, and she seriously contemplated giving up on her acting dreams altogether and finding a completely different career. However, this life-threatening incident may have actually helped her audition in an unexpected way. Because Somers had just faced the possibility of losing her life, the pressure of auditioning for a television show suddenly seemed much less intimidating by comparison. The experience gave her a carefree attitude during the audition process that might not have been there otherwise, allowing her natural personality and comedic timing to shine through, without the usual nervousness that can plague actors during important tryouts. What makes this story even more remarkable is the timing involved. Network executive Fred Silverman had desperately been searching through audition tapes the day before production was scheduled to begin, and he discovered Somers' audition tape that he somehow hadn't seen before. Her relaxed, authentic performance on that tape, influenced by her recent life-changing experience, convinced Silverman that she was perfect for the role of the bubbly, somewhat naive Chrissy Snow. This strange coincidence of near tragedy followed by career triumph shows how unpredictable the entertainment industry can be, where a brush with death can inadvertently lead to landing the role of a lifetime. Fact 3. The theme song composer also created Sesame Street. The catchy tune that invited viewers to "come and knock on our door" was written by the same musical mastermind who created some of the most beloved children's songs in television history, Joe Raposo. The composer behind Three's Company's memorable theme song was also the genius responsible for writing the Sesame Street theme song and countless classic children's melodies that have entertained generations of kids around the world. Raposo's impressive musical resume includes writing Bane Green, the song that became Kermit the Frog's signature tune, as well as C is for Cookie, which turned Cookie Monster into a lovable character that children still adore today. He also composed Sing, which became so popular that the Carpenters recorded their own version in 1973, turning it into a #3 hit on the Billboard Singles Chart. Beyond Sesame Street, Raposo wrote music for the Electric Company, another educational children's program that helped teach kids reading and grammar skills through catchy songs and memorable characters. What makes this connection even more fascinating is how Raposo seamlessly moved between writing music for preschoolers and creating the theme for a sitcom that dealt with adult themes like romantic relationships and living arrangements that were considered quite risque for 1970s television. The same creative mind that helped Big Bird teach children the alphabet also crafted the upbeat melody that introduced audiences to Jack, Janet, and Chrissy's unconventional living situation each week. Raposo was born in Fall River, Massachusetts, in 1937, and studied at Harvard College, where he developed his musical talents before moving to New York City in 1965. His decision to relocate led to his fateful meeting with Jim Henson, which eventually brought him to Sesame Street and launched his career in children's television. Raposo also composed the theme song for The Ropers, the Three's Company spin-off series, proving that his musical talents extended perfectly to the entire Three's Company universe. This unexpected connection shows how one talented composer could create music that appealed to both children learning their letters and adults enjoying primetime comedy. Fact 4. John Ritter's wardrobe malfunction caused censorship. One of the most infamous moments in Three's Company history occurred during the 1983 episode titled The Charming Stranger, when John Ritter's fashionably short shorts from that era allegedly revealed more than network television was prepared to show. The incident went completely unnoticed during the original broadcast and remained hidden for nearly 2 decades until an eagle-eyed viewer watching reruns on Nick at Night in March of 2001 spotted what appeared to be an accidental exposure and filed a complaint with the network. The wardrobe malfunction happened during a scene where Ritter was sitting on a bed while wearing the type of very short shorts that were popular men's fashion during the early 1980s. When he sat down and adjusted his position, the loose-fitting shorts apparently shifted in a way that briefly revealed parts of his anatomy that were definitely not intended for television audiences. What makes this situation particularly remarkable is that the scene had aired countless times in syndication over the years without anyone noticing the problem, which shows just how brief and subtle the moment actually was. Nick at Night took the viewer complaint seriously enough to immediately edit the scene, removing the problematic footage from all future broadcasts of the episode. However, there continues to be debate among fans and television historians about whether anything was actually visible in the original scene, or if it was simply an optical illusion created by shadows and the way the fabric moved when Ritter shifted his position on the bed. Ritter himself addressed the controversy with his typical sense of humor, making a tongue-in-cheek reference to the famous Almond Joy candy bar commercial when he jokingly told reporters, I've requested that Nick at Night air both versions, edited and unedited, because sometimes you feel like a nut, and sometimes you don't. His playful response to what could have been an embarrassing situation perfectly captured the lighthearted spirit that made him such a beloved television personality throughout his career. Fact 5. The opening credits brunette was Suzanne Somers, the mysterious brunette beauty who walks along the beach in Three's Company's opening credits, causing Jack to lose his balance and tumble off his bicycle in a moment of distraction, was not a random model or extra, as many viewers assumed over the years. This alluring woman was actually Suzanne Somers herself, disguised with a brunette wig to completely transform her appearance from her signature blonde locks that made Chrissy Snow so recognizable to television audiences. John Ritter himself revealed this well-kept secret in the book Come and Knock on Our Door, A Hers and His Guide to Three's Company by author Chris Mann, where he explained exactly how viewers could identify Somers despite her dramatic hair change. According to Ritter, the telltale sign was what he called her little Suzanne buns, referring to the distinctive way Somers' hair was styled even underneath the brunette wig, which gave away her true identity to anyone who knew what to look for. This clever bit of casting made perfect sense from a production standpoint, especially considering that the opening sequence was filmed during the show's early pilot stages, when the budget was extremely tight and every dollar had to be carefully managed. Rather than hiring an additional actress or model to play the role of the beach walker, the producers simply had Somers put on a wig and play a completely different character from her usual bubbly blonde persona. The transformation was so effective that it fooled viewers for years, creating one of television's most successful cases of hidden identity. The choice to use Somers in disguise also added an extra layer of meaning to the opening credits that most fans never realized was there. Jack's character was literally being distracted by his own roommate without knowing it, which perfectly captured the show's themes of mistaken identity and comic misunderstandings that would drive so many episodes throughout the series. This behind-the-scenes secret shows how creative the production team had to be during the show's early days to create memorable television moments while working within their limited resources. Fact 6. ABC paid $8,000 to free one actress. ABC executives wanted Audra Lindley to play Mrs. Helen Roper so desperately that they were willing to spend $8,000, which would be worth approximately $41,000 in today's money, to buy out an entire Los Angeles theater just to free her from a previous commitment for a single day. Lindley was performing in a stage production at the time when Three's Company producers decided she was absolutely perfect for the role of the nosy but lovable landlord's wife, who would become one of the show's most memorable characters. The problem was that Lindley had already signed a contract to perform in the theatrical production, and the show's schedule meant she was committed to appearing on stage during the exact weekend when the Three's Company pilot needed to be filmed. Since television pilots typically have very tight production schedules with little room for flexibility, the network faced a difficult choice between finding a different actress or finding a way to make Lindley available for the crucial filming dates. Rather than settle for their second choice, ABC executives made the extraordinary decision to purchase every single ticket for the theater performance that would conflict with the pilot taping. This meant that the entire theater would be empty for that particular show, allowing the production to be canceled and freeing Lindley to travel to the television studio and film her scenes as Mrs. Roper on the Sunday when the pilot was being recorded. This massive financial commitment shows just how confident the network was that Lindley was the right actress for the role, and their investment certainly paid off in the long run. Her chemistry with Norman Fell, who played her husband Stanley Roper, became one of the show's comedic highlights, with their bickering married couple dynamic providing countless laughs throughout the series. The success of their characters even led to their own spin-off series called The Ropers. proving that ABC's expensive gamble to secure Lindley's services was worth every penny they spent to buy out that theater performance. Fact 7. Suzanne Somers was cast day before filming. With production scheduled to begin the very next morning, ABC network executive Fred Silverman found himself in a desperate situation as he still hadn't found the right actress to play Chrissy Snow, one of the three main characters who would make or break the entire show. The role had been particularly difficult to cast, and despite seeing numerous auditions, none of the actresses had captured the specific combination of beauty, comedy timing, and innocent charm that the producers were looking for in the character, who would become television's most famous blonde. In a last-ditch effort to solve this casting crisis, Silverman decided to review all the audition tapes one more time, fast-forwarding through them quickly, in hopes of spotting something he might have missed during earlier viewings. As he raced through the footage, he suddenly stopped when he came across Suzanne Somers' audition tape, which he somehow had never seen before, despite the fact that it had been sitting in the pile of submissions for weeks. After watching Somers' performance, Silverman immediately knew he had found his Chrissy Snow and contacted her representatives that same day to offer her the role. Somers was hired on the spot and told to report to the set the following morning to begin filming the pilot episode, giving her virtually no time to prepare for what would become the most important role of her career. What makes this story even more mysterious is that no one involved in the production could ever give Silverman a clear explanation for why Somers' audition tape had been overlooked in the first place. When he asked the casting directors and producers why she hadn't been considered earlier, he received only vague responses and shrugs, with no one able to provide a straight answer about what had gone wrong during the initial screening process. Silverman later recalled that he recognized Somers from her previous appearance on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, where her bubbly personality had made a strong impression on him. This recognition, combined with her natural performance in the audition tape, convinced him that she was exactly what Three's Company needed to succeed. Fact 8. The cast couldn't sing the theme song. The producers of Three's Company originally had a charming idea to have the show's three main stars perform the now famous "Come and Knock on Our Door" theme song themselves, which would have created a more personal connection between the characters and the audience right from the opening credits. John Ritter, Joyce DeWitt, and Suzanne Somers were all asked to give singing the catchy tune a try, and the production team was hopeful that their natural chemistry as actors would translate into musical harmony that could make the opening sequence even more memorable. Unfortunately, this well-intentioned plan quickly proved to be a complete disaster when the three actors attempted to record their version of the theme song. Despite their obvious talents as comedic performers and their ability to work together seamlessly on screen, their singing abilities were apparently not quite up to the task of creating a professional quality recording that would play at the beginning of every episode for years to come. Associate producer Mimi Sewell was brutally honest in her assessment of the cast's musical performance, later stating that when it came to singing the theme song, they didn't even come close to what the producers needed for the show. Her blunt evaluation made it clear that the idea of having the actors sing their own theme song would have to be abandoned entirely, despite the potential charm and authenticity it might have brought to the opening credits. After the failed attempt with the main cast, the producers turned to professional singers Ray Charles, not the famous rhythm and blues legend, but rather the leader of the Ray Charles Singers who worked with Perry Como, and Julia Rinker to provide the vocals for "Come and Knock on Our Door." These experienced performers were able to deliver the upbeat, harmonious sound that composer Joe Raposo had envisioned when he wrote the song, creating the version that television audiences came to know and love. This behind-the-scenes failure shows that even talented actors have their limitations, And sometimes the best intentions don't always translate into the best results when it comes to creating memorable television. Fact 9. 3 separate pilots were filmed. Three's Company went through an unusually lengthy and expensive development process that was extremely rare for American television at the time, with ABC rejecting not just 1, but 2 complete pilot episodes before finally accepting the 3rd version that would launch the series to success. This triple pilot situation was almost unheard of in the television industry during the 1970s, when networks typically gave shows only one chance to prove themselves before moving on to other projects. The first pilot was written by famed Broadway writer Peter Stone, who set the series in New York City and envisioned the male roommate as a successful but underpaid chef working in a fancy French restaurant, while the female characters were conceived as a high-powered executive secretary and a glamorous fashion model. However, network executive Fred Silverman felt that this version was too sophisticated and wouldn't appeal to middle America, so he rejected it entirely and ordered a complete rewrite. The second pilot was created by the writing team of Don Nichol, Michael Ross, and Bernie West, who were better known by their initials NRW and had previously gained fame by adapting the British series Till Death Us Do Part into the American hit All in the Family. Their version followed the original British show much more closely, with the male character becoming a cooking student like his English counterpart, and they moved the setting from New York to the beachside community of Santa Monica, California. Even this second attempt didn't satisfy ABC executives, who demanded yet another revision before they would commit to putting the show on their schedule. The third and final pilot was created with Suzanne Somers, John Ritter, and Joyce DeWitt in their now famous roles, and this version finally captured the right combination of humor, chemistry, and mass appeal that the network had been looking for all along. This triple pilot process was so unusual that it became a noteworthy part of television history, with only a few other shows like All in the Family having gone through a similar extensive development process between 1968 and 1970. Fact 10. Jeffrey Tambor played 3 different characters. During the later seasons of Three's Company, the producers pulled off one of the most brazen casting tricks in sitcom history by having actor Jeffrey Tambor appear as 3 completely different characters in separate episodes, with none of the main characters ever acknowledging that these supposedly unrelated people looked exactly alike. Tambor, who would later become famous for his roles in Arrested Development and Transparent, portrayed a wealthy businessman, a psychiatrist, and a dentist across multiple episodes, creating an absurd situation that the show treated as completely normal. What makes this casting decision even more remarkable is that Tambor didn't make any significant changes to his appearance between these different roles, relying only on different costumes and perhaps slight adjustments to his hair or mannerisms to distinguish one character from another. The rich man, psychiatrist, and dentist all looked essentially like Jeffrey Tambor playing Jeffrey Tambor, yet Jack, Janet, and the other roommates interacted with each character as if they were meeting them for the very first time. This bizarre approach to guest casting was typical of the show's willingness to embrace absurd comedy and ignore logical inconsistencies in favor of getting laughs. The writers and producers apparently felt that audiences would either not notice the repeated casting or would simply accept it as part of the show's comedic universe, where mistaken identities and misunderstandings were already central themes in nearly every episode. The decision to use the same actor for multiple roles also reflected the practical realities of television production during the 1970s and early 80s, when budgets were often tight and producers looked for ways to save money wherever possible. Rather than hiring 3 different actors to play these supporting characters, the show could simply bring back Tambor whenever they needed someone to fill a similar role, regardless of whether it made logical sense within the show's fictional world. This kind of casual disregard for continuity would be much more difficult to get away with in today's television landscape, where fans are more likely to notice and discuss such inconsistencies online. Fact 11. John Ritter's son accidentally appeared in credits. The adorable toddler in overalls who wandered up to Joyce DeWitt while she was feeding goats during the opening credits sequence that began in Season 6 was not a hired child actor, but rather John Ritter's own son Jason, who had escaped from his mother's watchful eye during filming at the Los Angeles Zoo. This unplanned appearance happened when the production crew was shooting new opening credits to feature the updated cast after Priscilla Barnes joined the show as Terry Alden, replacing the departing Suzanne Somers and Jenna Lee Harrison. The filming took place at the Los Angeles Zoo in Griffith Park, where the cast members were being recorded riding a zoo tram and interacting with various animals to create a more family-friendly opening sequence that would appeal to viewers of all ages. Jason Ritter, who was just a small child at the time, had been brought along to the zoo by his mother while his father worked on the new opening credits, but the curious toddler apparently found the goat feeding area much more interesting than staying safely by his mother's side. When young Jason wandered into the shot and approached Joyce DeWitt at the goat pen, the cameras kept rolling, and DeWitt's genuine reaction of delight and laughter at seeing the unexpected little visitor was so natural and charming that the producers decided to keep the moment in the final version of the opening credits. DeWitt herself later revealed this behind-the-scenes secret in bonus features included on the Season 4 DVD release, explaining how the spontaneous interaction with John's son created one of the most heartwarming moments in the show's opening sequence. Jason Ritter himself has admitted that he has no memory of this incident from his early childhood, but the moment was preserved forever as part of Three's Company history. Ironically, Jason would grow up to become an actor himself, later starring in shows like Parenthood and providing the voice of Dipper Pines in the animated series Gravity Falls, making his accidental television debut in his father's sitcom an early preview of his future career in entertainment. Fact 12. Richard Klein was banished for character questions. Richard Klein, who played Jack's best friend and neighbor Larry Dallas, learned the hard way that the producers of Three's Company did not appreciate actors who questioned their creative decisions or tried to have input into how their characters were developed. During a routine run-through rehearsal, Klein made what seemed like a reasonable professional request when he approached the producers and simply said, "I'd like to discuss my character," hoping to have a conversation about Larry's motivations and perhaps suggest ways to make him more three-dimensional. This innocent attempt at artistic collaboration was met with swift and harsh punishment from the show's production team, who apparently viewed any questioning of their writing or character development as insubordination that needed to be dealt with immediately. Rather than engaging in the kind of creative discussion that might be common on other television sets, the producers decided to teach Klein a lesson by completely writing his character out of the show for the next 4 weeks of episodes. The banishment meant that Klein lost 4 weeks of work and income, which was a significant financial penalty for an actor who was still building his career and depended on regular television appearances to pay his bills. More importantly, the punishment served as a clear warning to the rest of the cast that the producers expected actors to simply perform their roles as written without asking questions or offering suggestions about character development or storylines. This incident reveals the strict hierarchical structure that existed behind the scenes of Three's Company, where the writers and producers maintained complete creative control and did not welcome input from the actors who were actually bringing the characters to life on screen. The harsh response to Klein's simple request also suggests that the production environment could be quite intimidating for cast members who might have their own ideas about how to improve their performances or develop characters. Despite this temporary setback, Klein eventually returned to the show and continued playing Larry Dallas throughout the series, though presumably he learned to keep any future character suggestions to himself. Fact 13. The apartment was actually a house. The building that millions of viewers recognized as the apartment complex where Jack, Janet, and Chrissy lived in their famous second-floor unit was not actually an apartment building at all, but rather a private single-family house located at 2912 4th Street in Santa Monica, California. This deception was so convincing that fans of the show spent years believing they were looking at a genuine multi-unit apartment complex that housed multiple tenants, including the trio upstairs and the Ropers downstairs. The exterior shots of this supposed apartment building were used throughout the first 3 seasons of the show, appearing in the opening credits and establishing shots that helped viewers understand where the characters lived in relation to the beautiful Santa Monica beachfront community. The house was chosen because its architectural style and size made it look plausible as a small apartment building that might realistically contain several separate living units, even though it was actually designed and built as a private residence for a single family. This clever use of a regular house as a television apartment building shows how creative location scouts and producers had to be when working with limited budgets during the early seasons of the show. Rather than spending money to build elaborate sets or rent an actual apartment building for exterior filming, they simply found a house that looked the part and used camera angles and editing to sell the illusion that it contained multiple separate apartments. The choice of this particular Santa Monica location also helped establish the show's Southern California beach community setting, which was an important part of the series' overall appeal and atmosphere. The house's proximity to the ocean and its typical California architectural style reinforced the idea that the characters were living in an affordable but desirable beachside community where young adults might realistically share living expenses. For fans who have made pilgrimages to Santa Monica to see the famous Three's Company apartment building in person, discovering that it's actually just a regular house has often come as a surprising revelation that demonstrates how effectively television can create convincing fictional worlds using everyday locations. Fact 14. Heather Locklear's Kleenex audition disaster. When the producers of Three's Company were searching for an actress to replace Suzanne Somers after her departure from the show, a young and relatively unknown Heather Locklear auditioned for what could have been her big break into television stardom. Locklear, who would later become famous for her roles on Dynasty and Melrose Place, was understandably nervous about this important audition opportunity and was particularly worried about the possibility of developing embarrassing sweat stains on her outfit during the high-pressure performance. In an attempt to prevent any wardrobe disasters that might hurt her chances of landing the role, Locklear came up with what seemed like a practical solution by stuffing tissues under her arms before entering the audition room. She hoped that the Kleenex would absorb any perspiration and keep her looking polished and professional throughout her performance, allowing her to focus on delivering her lines without worrying about visible signs of nervousness. Unfortunately for Locklear, her well-intentioned plan backfired spectacularly when the tissues began slipping out of position during her audition. As she performed the scripted scene, the Kleenex gradually worked its way out from under her arms and became visible to everyone in the room, creating an awkward and distracting situation that completely undermined her attempt to appear confident and prepared for the role. The situation became even more mortifying for Locklear when she finished her audition and left the room, only to immediately hear laughter erupting from behind the closed door. When she realized what had happened and discovered that the tissues had been slipping out of her shirt throughout her entire performance, she understood that the producers had been laughing at her wardrobe malfunction rather than appreciating her comedic timing or acting abilities. Locklear later joked about the incident in interviews, explaining that the producers probably thought she had been trying to enhance her figure by stuffing her shirt, which made the whole situation even more embarrassing than it already was. Needless to say, she did not get the role, which ultimately went to Priscilla Barnes. But Locklear's career certainly wasn't hurt by this early setback. Fact 15. Joyce DeWitt's Pantyhose endorsement deal. Joyce DeWitt had such a strong personal policy about never showing her bare legs on Three's Company that she consistently wore pantyhose with every single outfit throughout the entire run of the series, even in situations where most people would consider hosiery completely unnecessary or inappropriate. Whether her character Janet was wearing shorts, skirts, dresses, or even casual summer outfits, DeWitt made sure her legs were always covered with pantyhose, creating a distinctive look that became part of her character's signature style. This unusual fashion choice was so consistent and noticeable that it caught the attention of executives at Legs, the popular pantyhose manufacturer known for their innovative egg-shaped packaging and widespread advertising campaigns during the 1970s and 80s. The company recognized that DeWitt's dedication to wearing their product on one of television's most popular sitcoms was essentially providing them with free advertising every week, as millions of viewers were seeing pantyhose presented as a normal and attractive part of everyday casual wear. Legs approached DeWitt with an official endorsement deal that capitalized on her reputation for always wearing hosiery, turning her personal wardrobe preference into a profitable business relationship that benefited both the actress and the company. The endorsement deal allowed DeWitt to showcase her dancing skills in Legs commercials, where she could demonstrate how the pantyhose allowed for comfortable movement and flexibility, while maintaining an elegant appearance. What made this endorsement particularly clever was how it grew organically from DeWitt's actual behavior on the show, rather than being a forced product placement or artificial marketing creation. Viewers had already associated her with wearing pantyhose because she genuinely wore them in every episode, so the transition to commercial spokeswoman felt natural and authentic, rather than like a typical celebrity endorsement that had no real connection to the star's actual preferences. This business arrangement shows how an actor's personal choices about wardrobe and appearance could sometimes lead to unexpected opportunities outside of their regular television work, turning individual quirks or preferences into profitable side careers in advertising and product promotion.